Okay, hello. Welcome to today's installment of video series that is presenting a summary of this terrific book, Science of the Cosmos, Science of the Soul by William Chittick. And today we're going to be covering the second half of chapter 6. So let's just jump right into it. The title of this subsection is called Understanding the Soul, and it begins on page 121 in the book. Okay, so this is going to be a big, long quote that I'm reading to you. Okay. The intellectual tradition refers to the underlying substance of a human being as nafs, N-A-F-S, which is the basic reflexive pronoun in the Arabic language. The word is translated as self or soul, depending on context. In its philosophical sense, it designates the invisible something that makes its appearance in the cosmos wherever there is life, and hence it is ascribed to every living thing. Verifying the nature of the soul was one of the foundational activities of the Muslim intellectuals. A standard way to do so was to begin by investigating the apparitions of the soul in the visible world. The visible realm is a conglomeration of bodily appearances, yet we constantly differentiate among them in terms of their modalities of appearance. We know the difference between living things and dead things precisely by the way they appear to us. Soul is a generic name for what shows itself when we recognize life and awareness. When we recognize these qualities in things, we simultaneously recognize them in ourselves. It is soul that knows soul. We know a living thing because we are alive, and we recognize a self-acting thing because we have self-activity. What we see outside, we find inside. Finding the external apparitions of soul is to experience the soul's presence to itself. Life and awareness are precisely properties that we find in ourselves in the very act of discerning them in others. There are degrees of soul, which is to say that this invisible something is more intense and influential in some things than in others. As Tu Weiming writes about Chinese understanding, quote, "Rocks, trees, animals, humans, and gods represent different levels of spirituality based on varying compositions of qi. In the typical Islamic version, the qi, or invisible power that animates rocks, is called, quote, nature. Only at the plant level is the second modality of qi added to the first, nor are rocks, quote, only matter. In the hylomorphism adopted by the intellectual tradition, the role of matter is largely conceptual because there is no such thing as matter per se. The name is given to an observed receptivity of the apparition of form. Form itself is an intelligible reality that descends into the realm of appearances from the spirit or intellect, and ultimately from God, who is in Quranic language, the form giver. All things are forms. There's nothing in the universe that does not manifest the living presence of intelligence and the intelligible. The classification of creatures into inanimate, plant, animal, human, and angel is one way of acknowledging different degrees of soul. The most complex and layered soul is found in human beings. Outwardly, this appears in the indefinite diversity of their activities, which clearly has something to do with the vast differences in aptitude and ability. Because of the diverse and comprehensive powers of souls, human souls, people can grasp and replicate all the activities that other modalities of soul cause to appear in the world. In discussion of the human soul, texts frequently elaborate on the intimate correspondence between soul and cosmos, which were understood in something of a subject-object relationship. The human soul is an aware subject that can take as its object the whole universe. So closely intertwined are soul and cosmos that, in Tu Weiming's term, Their relationship can be properly called the organismic. They can be seen as one organism with two faces. Okay, we had a little break there. I had some technical difficulties with my camera, which hopefully now I have worked out. And we will pick it back up where we left off. And hopefully we can make it through to the end of chapter 6 with this shoot without the camera giving more trouble again. Okay, so I'm reading from page about 122-ish, and the final paragraph of that quote is, "It follows that there can be no microcosm without macrocosm, and no macrocosm without microcosm. The vital cosmic role of human beings was always affirmed. It was recognized that the macrocosm appears before human beings, but it was also understood that the macrocosm is brought into existence precisely to make it possible for human beings to appear and for them to learn how to be human. Without human beings, there is no reason for the universe to exist in the first place. The teleology was always acknowledged. For the intellectual tradition, the purpose of studying the macrocosm is to come to understand the powers and capacities of the microcosm. By understanding the object, we simultaneously grasp the potentialities and abilities of the subject. We cannot study the natural world without learning about ourselves, and we cannot learn about ourselves without coming to understand the wisdom inherent in the natural world. Social reality was often studied for the same purpose, as an aid to understand the human soul. It was not uncommon for Muslim philosophers to provide descriptions of the ideal society, but they were not interested in the utopian dreams which have so often preoccupied modern political theorists and which form the backbone of ideology. Rather, they wanted to understand and describe the various potentialities of the human soul that became manifest through social and political activity. They did not want to set down a program, but rather to illustrate to aspiring philosophers that every attribute and power of the soul, every beauty and ugly character trait, can be recognized in the diversity of human types. When seekers of wisdom recognize their own selves as microcosms of society, they can strive to know and realize the true sovereignty of the soul, the real philosopher king, which is the intellect, whose duty it is to govern both soul and body with wisdom and compassion. Okay, now here's a little bit of a Swedenborg break. I've written this. Swedenborg emphasizes that the soul is specifically formed to receive divine love and wisdom, and to the degree to which each person receives these defines their particular humanity and heavenly quality. And that's from Divine Love and Wisdom, number 287. This capacity and the choices that each person makes with it further shape the individuality of each soul. Also, the uniqueness of each soul is built into creation, flows from the inherited and developed character, and is both spiritual and eternal. Each soul is a distinct form capable of unique reception of divine love and wisdom, forever maintaining its individuality in this life and the next. Professor Chittick first presents the generic universal soul, which is synonymous with chi. Humans, like all objects of creation, are receptive of chi, but humans alone can translate chi into free activity and awareness. Humans can see, understand, verify, and realize the chi. All of this happens only through the intelligent and intelligible light of the soul, the highest and most comprehensive dimension of the human substance, the fully realized intellect. So this aligns with Swedenborg's soul, which is the divine presence in each individual, the divine human, or life received by us. Okay, the next paragraph subsection is titled Origin and Return, and it is on page 125. What then is this intellect that is the fountainhead and goal of intellectual learning? To define it is impossible, because Intellect is the very understanding that allows for definitions. It cannot be limited and confined by its own radiance. However, we can describe it in terms of its role in cosmogenesis, whereby all things are created through it. And we can also depict it in terms of the human return to God, which can be experienced in its fullness only by the actualized intellect, which is the self-aware image of God. Let me deal with cosmogenesis first. The wisdom tradition typically discussed the birth of the cosmos as beginning with God's creation, or emanation of the first creature, which is given by names like intellect, spirit, word, pen, and light. Things appear from the one principle in a definite, intelligible order and in keeping with a fixed and known hierarchy, known that is to God and to the intellect, but not necessarily to us. It was obvious to Muslim thinkers that the one God creates intelligently, and that the first manifestation of his reality, the contingent being closest to his unity, the stage of created actuality nearest to his utter and absolute simplicity, is pure intelligence and awareness. Within this awareness are prefigured the universe and the human soul. This living intelligence is the instrument through which the real ordered, arranged, and established all creatures, and it lies at the root of every subject and every object. It is a single reality that is the self-aware and self-conscious source of the cosmos and the soul. Among all creatures, humans alone manifest its full and pure light, a light that the Quran calls the spirit that God blew into Adam. Inasmuch as the fall of Adam has a negative significance, it is nothing but the obscuration of this light. When we look at the intellect from the point of view of the return to God, we see that the goal of human existence is to remember God by recollecting the divine image within the self and awakening the intellect. The task of seekers is to recover in themselves the luminous consciousness that fills the universe. This recovery is the fruition and fulfillment of human possibility. Although the intellect is dimly present in every soul, human or otherwise, in the human being alone is it a seed that can be sprouted and cultivated, nourished, strengthened, and fully actualized. The human soul is a knowing and aware subject that has the capacity to take as its object the whole cosmos and everything within it. However, it is typically blind to its own possibilities and takes on the color of souls that are not fully human. And truly human activity does not come easy. Most of us have to be reminded about what being human implies, and even budding intellectuals with all their gifts have a steep and rocky road ahead of them if they are to achieve the goal. Part of learning how to be human involves differentiating the qualities of the human soul from the qualities of other souls, which represent limiting and confining possibilities of soulish existence. The moral injunctions to overcome animal instincts rise up from the understanding that animals cannot manifest the fullness of intellectual understanding and ontological possibility. This is not to denigrate animal qualities, since they play positive and necessary roles in the world and in human makeup. The issue is rather one of priorities. People need to put things in their proper places. They must order the world and their own selves in an intelligent manner, and this means they must understand everything in terms of the rules of the cosmos. They must give everything that has hack its hack, and all things have their hack both outside and inside the soul. The soul, then, is the subjective pole of manifest reality, and its counterpoint is the cosmos, the objective pole. The soul in its human form has the unique capacity to know all things. However, the soul possesses only the potential to know all things, not the actuality of knowing. Actuality is a quality of intellect. Every act of knowing actualizes the soul's potential and brings it closer to the intelligent and intelligible light at its core. But what exactly is the limit of the soul's potential? What can it know? What can it strive to know? The intellectual tradition answers that there is no limit to the soul's potential because nothing exists that the soul cannot know. The goal of learning is to know everything that can possibly be known. However, knowable things need to be prioritized. If we do not search for understanding in the right manner and in the correct order, the goal will remain forever unattainable. If we do not give knowing its hack, we will forever remain ignorant. As long as the soul remains occupied with a search for wisdom and has not yet actualized its full potential, it remains a soul that is an aware self with the possibility of achieving a greater awareness. Only when it reaches the actuality of all-knowingness in its innermost core of its being can it be called an intellect in the proper sense of the word. At this point, it comes to know itself as it was meant to be. It recovers its true nature and returns to its proper place in the cosmic hierarchy. The philosophers frequently call the human soul a potential intellect, or a hilic intellect, which means material, which is to say that it has capacity to know all things. Only after it has ascended through the stages of actualizing its own awareness and achieving its own innate perfection is it called an actual intellect. Philosophers sometimes refer to the actualization of the intellect by employing the Quranic terms salvation or felicity. They would agree with Tu Weiming, who writes, "Salvation means the full realization of the anthropocosmic reality inherent in our human nature." For them, this anthropocosmic reality is the intellect that gave birth to both macrocosm and microcosm, and that is innate to the human soul. Okay, this section is titled Omniscience, and it begins on page 128. And this is me writing this. I don't think that the term omniscience is here used to mean the sort of omniscience that is ascribed to God. The individual human is finite, and our rational consciousness is limited to sequential conceptions. We can achieve a state of general understanding of the basic order of the universe, wherefrom we are able to constantly draw accurate conclusions in every context we find ourselves to be dealing with at any particular moment. That is a state one might call omniscience, as it is basically to know what is the correct interpretation of the now at every moment. That is, in my opinion, a fully realized intellect, omniscience on a finite human level. We can achieve this state of life through a deep, harmonious connection with God, who will provide the gift of wisdom through influx moment to moment as needed. In the final section on page 147, Chittick again mentions the reconnection with God by the individual through the realized intellect, saying that at that stage the individual achieves omniscience, though not in a differentiated way, describing our finite participation in omniscience as unitary understanding and awareness of all things at their root, which is a spontaneous knowing, i.e. influx. Chittick states that traditional Islamic philosophy's quest to, quote, know all things is not a compilation of infinite data, a spinning of theories and cataloging of facts that is the scientific concept of knowing. Rather, traditional Islamic scholars sought to attain omniscience through reintegration with the omniscient. Okay, so that concludes chapter 6. We made it through without the video glitching out, so I'm happy about that. So now I will edit a couple of videos and upload them, and then we will proceed in the next installment into chapter 7, which I'm not too sure how long it is, whether or not we'll get it in one video or not. But anyway, I hope you will tune into that when it eventually reaches YouTube, and I appreciate it very much. I hope you'll like and subscribe and comment, etc., of course. All right, see you next time. Have a good one.